Welcome back to Military Law Talks. So today's story is about a DOD official who potentially was fired for her role in the DOD COVID Vax mandate. And so let's take a look at this story. Okay, so this is a Breitbart article that was released. The headline reads Exclusive Senior CIA Official Who Facilitated Biden's Military COVID-19 Vaccine Mandate Fired. And so, if you are familiar with the COVID-19 Vax mandate, so it was originally mandated under the Biden administration, under SecDef Austin, who mandated the COVID vaccine. But if you had any awareness of what was going on at the time, you would know that previously, because of the controversy and the litigation surrounding the anthrax vaccine, the DOD cannot be forced to they can't mandate a vaccine that's under emergency use authorization. They can only encourage service members to get that vaccine. They can't mandate it because essentially it's kind of like, experimenting on service members, which, let's be honest, the DoD does have a history of doing, and I will likely do videos in the future on that kind of dark history of the DoD experimenting on troops. And so, shortly after the DoD mandate came out, which it can mandate something emergency use, but it needs a presidential waiver and it needs to notify Congress. The DoD needs to notify Congress. That didn't happen. And so what they did is they had this senior DoD official essentially write a memo saying, hey, we know we have this FDA approved vaccine that's not available in the US. It's actually not on the market, but it's interchangeable, right, with the EUA, the emergency use authorization, which is really the only one the DoD had. And so, you can just give them that and we can still mandate troops to take it, even though it's technically not the same legally or medically. They're actually different vaccines. But this memo basically provided top cover to say, hey, they're interchangeable. And so therefore, we're just going to mandate it. And if you refuse, we're going to kick you out. And so, right, something like 4,000 or 5,000 people were kicked out of the military for refusing. And now under the President Trump's administration are allowed to come back in. And I'm going to do a later video on the new guidance about reinstating those individuals. But let's go through this article. So this senior official used to work at the DoD, but recently switched over to the CIA. Interesting. So this is Terry Adaman. I have no idea how to say this. So this is her. So she is worked under the Biden administration, and she's the one that signed the switcharoo memo. And so it says that she worked for the Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs. She was the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs, and then recently left and went to the CIA for Global Health Services. And allegedly, she has been fired, and her firing is due to her role in, quote, this is a quote from the article, enforcing service members to choose between taking a vaccine that was under emergency use authorization or being kicked out, according to a source. And so it just recounts that guidance. And so in the guidance, she says that they're interchangeable. And it says, per FDA guidance, these two vaccines are, quote, interchangeable, and the DoD healthcare providers should, quote, use doses distributed under the EUA to administer the vaccination series as if the doses were licensed vaccines. Because, again, the FDA gave a license, a FDA approval to Comirnaty, or however you say it. I don't know how to say it, but that wasn't available. We still had the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine, and that's what was being given to service members. And so under this memo, that was kind of top cover, like I said, for this switcheroo. The article says her memo was considered legally dubious even inside the Pentagon, as Breitbart News reported in September 2022. A month after Adharom issued her memo, a senior defense official proposed allowing service members who did not want to take the EUA vaccine to wait for the FDA-approved vaccine before facing punishment for being unvaccinated. But that draft memo never was put into place, and people were absolutely, they got bad paper and then were kicked out of the military. Some were even court-martialed for refusing the vaccine. And so this article says, according to documents obtained by Breitbart News, the draft memo that had been sent to military services for coordination, and a senior Air Force official objected to it. That's the memo with that proposed change, arguing that the change could open the military up for more litigation and possibly force it to reverse punishments already given for not taking the vaccine. Absolutely. So if that change would have been made, it would have been great proof for the individuals who had already been punished or had already had pending lawsuits against the government. So it makes sense from the DOD's perspective. Why didn't they make that change? And so this is something that is currently pending for, there's actually a current case that's still pending regarding the DOD vaccine mandate, specifically for the Coast Guard. And so I'm going to cover that case in a later video. And so further with this article, it says under Title 10, the Defense Secretary can order service members to take an FDA-approved vaccine, but cannot legally order service members to take an EUA manufactured vaccine without seeking an approval, getting a waiver from the president, right? And they have to notify Congress. That had never been done. And so in order to mandate the COVID vaccine, they first had to get FDA approval. And then once there was FDA approval, well, that vaccine wasn't available. So then in comes this switcheroo memo that essentially provided the top cover to say, well, we're still going to give you the mandate, essentially the EUA vaccine, as if it were the FDA approved one. And a lot of service members, I remember at the time, were pointing this out, that, hey, it's not even available to get this FDA approved one. I only want the FDA approved one. And they refused. And like I said, because of this memo, they still faced discipline and getting kicked out of the military because of essentially this memo. So it looks like potentially she was terminated because of her role in this. We don't know for sure. But the article goes on to state that apparently this isn't the first time that she's kind of been in hot water for skirting the law. So quoting from the article, it says that she had left the DOD in 2022 to go to the Department of Veteran Affairs, where she appeared to violate the Hatch Act. So if you continue to read this article, it talks about how she liked a tweet while she was working for the federal government that was soliciting donations for Act Blue. And under the Hatch Act, a Hatch Act prohibits federal employees from acting in a partisan manner. And one of the prohibitions, it's a 24/7 prohibition. So it doesn't matter if you're off duty. It doesn't matter if you're in a personal capacity. You cannot solicit any campaign funds, any campaign donations. And that has been interpreted to even mean you can't like, share, thumbs up, nothing, even tweets or Facebook posts. But apparently she had liked a tweet that had a link for donation for Act Blue and asking for donations. And so that is a Hatch Act violation. And so apparently she had that Hatch Act violation while at the VA, and now she's over at the CIA. And well, maybe she's out of a job now. So it does talk about how more than 8,700 service members were forced out of the military, and tens of thousands or more to have estimated to voluntarily have left. And it talks about the new program to allow reinstatement of those service members. And like I said, in a later video, I'm going to go over the new guidance that has recently been pushed out by the DOD on reinstating those service members if they choose to come back, either service members who left voluntarily because of the COVID vaccine or who were involuntarily separated because of the vaccine. There's two different tracks on how to get reinstated. And for the involuntarily separated service members, they can actually get back pay, back promotions, etc. But it is offset by certain things. So in my next video, I'm going to go over all of that and go over the details of that because the details have recently been published. So hopefully you liked this video. If you did, press that like button, subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed, and share this video out there. I'm a new channel, so please spread the word and share my channel with others who you think would find this content valuable. Thank you, and see you in the next video.